Welcome back. Yes, indeed. That is what we're focusing on today on the program. We've got two gentlemen joining us from our studios in Abuja. Honorable Benjamin Kalu, spokesperson of the House of Reps, member of the APC, and Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, member of the PDP and former Chairman House Committee on Capital Market. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program.
Thank you, Chamberlain. Thanks for inviting me.
Good morning. It's my pleasure to be here.
All right, gentlemen, as much as many may have watched some of those matters as they transpired, but let's get to hear from both of you what actually transpired. Honorable Kalu, let's start with you.
All right. Thank you very much, Chamberlain and Nigerians. It is our duty to always get Nigerians up to speed with what is happening in the parliament, and I really want to appreciate your channel for being on top of their game in bridging this gap to ensure that information is given from the horse's mouth. Yesterday, as you know, the all-important Electoral Act Amendment Bill, which did not survive in various dispensations, finally was laid before the House day before yesterday, and yesterday was for the consideration. And you know, it's an all-important bill because the survival of our democracy, the advancement of our democracy is hinged on it. And especially when the desire of Nigerians, the hunger of Nigerians is to have one or two places in the piece of legislation, adjusted to reflect the times we are in, and to also cure the problems of the past in our electoral system. So we, because we are a diverse country, the colors of our diversity showed itself yesterday, and coming from various constituencies, you will not be shocked to know that many people have various interests. And those interests, they showed the true color of Nigeria yesterday. We started by looking at those sections that passed through without amendment, and then also we have those sections that we looked at that needed amendment. We were able to pass through section 2 to 5 without amendment, and then we have 7 to 22 without amendment. And then we have 24 to 34 without amendment, and then 38 to 48 without amendment. We did 50. We did 50, 51. We had issues with 52. That was where we stopped. And the ones that we actually amended, we amended 1, clause 1. We amended 6. We amended 23. And we amended 36, 37, and 49. We are trying to amend 52 before the issue started, where the issue of electronic voting or electronic transmission of results came up. But from what we observed in the House was divided. A part wanted it to be fully manual for transmission, and a part wanted it to be fully electronic. But there was a medial approach to it, which was proposed by Honorable Faleke, who said, why don't we do a combination of both at the discretion of Inec? It is possible to do electronic, we do electronic, and where we cannot, we do manual. Still, that did not pass through, irrespective of the fact that the voice vote was very obvious where it was going, both for the transmission of the result electronically, the first proposal and the second proposal. Now the question becomes, what happens in a situation like that? Usually the drafters of our House rule had this kind of situation in mind when they were drafting the House rules, and that made them to include what we call Order 11. Order 11 Rule 2, and if combined with Rule 7 as well, which says if there is a disagreement with the decision coming from the chair on any issue, the House could go into a division. And if it is raised by a member or a few members who feel that the decision coming from the chair was either biased or that the chair entered into the arena, it calls for the division of the House. And it is now the duty of the chair not to step down, but to appoint tellers. The tellers will now be able to take independent votes where each member will be able to cast their vote.
Okay,
when we
all right,
vote, we'll know whether the voice vote had credibility or not. Or
that particular point.
So that is what
we'll stretch that point as we proceed. But let's equally, just hang on a minute. We'll stretch that point in a moment. But let's equally get Honorable Yusuf to give us his perspective of what transpired. Go ahead, Honorable Yusuf.
Thank you. Good morning. Simple. Consideration of Electoral Act, Bill 2021. Most of these items were passed in the 8th Assembly. The President refused assent. My opinion was that in 9th Assembly will have just dusted the document of 8th Assembly and represent, since on 3 occasions, areas the presidency raised issue which were corrected, and that under the first 6 months we'll just have an electoral bill before us. But in the opinion of others, we should go back fully and rework it. I'm privileged to be a member of the committee on Inec, and I worked with my other colleagues on this. I want to make some things very clear. At every stage of our work, Inec told us that they are ready for electronic transmission. That there's no part of this country that cannot do electronic transmission. That they use it in Edo and Ondo. And that when people talk about network, there's a simple thing. If you get a message in an area where there's network fluctuation, what have you, the moment you step into where there's network coverage is good, it pops up on your phone. And as of today, I doubt if there are any community where you don't have POS, where you have this Ghana, Senegal.
Yeah, Honorable Yusuf, we'll get to that bit, but I hope you're tailoring it to what transpired on the floor of the House and why that rowdy session was.
What transpired simply yesterday was that when we got to section 52, we had some of two little skirmishes in the other area, but not much. It was section 52, transmission of result. Amendment was proposed that it should be electronically transmitted. And by my understanding, the majority of members voted for e-transmission, who was ruled otherwise. At that stage, I was not even in support of another amendment being proposed. Just like the spokesperson of the House, I wanted to exhaust the procedure laid out in our rule book. If the chair is not clear, maybe he ruled based on what he heard, and so 1 or 2 persons questioned it. He put the question again. If the voice vote is not clear to him or this challenge, we'll move to the next stage, which is division of the House. So my proposal yesterday was that let's stay on the First Amendment and exhaust the procedure. But in the wisdom of somebody, which I don't still feel is in the right direction, is in accordance with our rule, another proposal was made in an attempt to get us to a compromise. And to my understanding, the voice vote still went in favor of that amendment, but was ruled otherwise. It's a fact that when it comes to issues of election, emotions, interests are what comes up. But what I've come to understand is that at the level we're at, it's not every time you expect to win the argument. If it does not go in your favor, you prepare for next time.
Okay,
so I believe that we'll cross that today. But as for yesterday, what transpired was that members on the floor, by my understanding, voted e-transmission.
All right. We'll still get subsequent views, particularly when it gets to Inec, being a member of that committee on Inec from you as you progress. But, Honorable Kalu, now you built up almost to the next stage, and about the voice voting system. I know you've spoken about that on this program as well, about how this voice vote works and the impression people have about the voice vote. But what people saw yesterday, which you alluded to, it was clear where that was going, but it was ruled otherwise. So many just wonder, isn't that a clear violation of the rules of the House, as it were? Is it allowed to do that when it's clear that it's going one way and it's ruled otherwise?
Yeah, the power of the gavel is much. And the leader that controls the gavel,
Use of the power of the gavel,
occupies a very sensitive position.
Honorable Kalu.
A position that must be guided by the rules of the House.
Okay.
And based on that, what ought to have happened yesterday was follow the rules. I don't speak for any political party. I don't speak as APC or PDP. I speak as the spokesperson of the House, as the image maker of the House, whom the public run to when they want to get clarification like you are asking now. Order 11 Rule 2 is sacrosanct. It's clear. Once there is a doubtful, there is a doubt on the judgment of the chair or the speaker, and a member who has the mandate of his constituent raises the issue that we should go into division, he should be obliged. There is nowhere in our rules that says that once members raise issue calling for division, that they should be ignored. So that is what offended a lot of members. And you know, as leaders, we hold our position as trustees for the citizens of this country and must always exercise it, bearing in mind that we are accountable to the people. Voice populi, voice Dei. The voice of the people is the voice of God that we all worship. If the majority leans towards one side, this is democracy. It is by number. Our ruling must reflect that. So I believe, just like most members who've been trying to calm them down, that our rules must be obeyed. It has not gone so bad. Nigerians should have the confidence. I read something that you were just, reporting on Daily Times, where it said Nigerians, the National Assembly destroyed the hope of Nigerians. Nigerians should be hopeful. We have moved this discussion to today. And why we move it to today is to bring in both Inec, to hear them and compare whatever they are going to say against the report they give to the committees that they are able to do electronic voting. Let's see if they are going to go against what they have proposed or if they are going to stick to it. That is one. We're going to hear the NCC tell us whether POS work in every part of Nigeria or text messages work in every part of Nigeria. That is what we're going to hear. And we're also going to present debate that will lay credence to whether manual, combination of manual and electronic is to anybody's disadvantage. Those are the things we are going to do. But as you know, Nigerians should not lose faith in us, because in Parliament, these kind of things happen. People shout, people fight, but we are one house. We are moving for nation building. So be patient with us. We are going, I'm happy that finally it is here. Before we were accused that electronic voting, we've been induced not to bring it in. It was removed from the Electoral Act. Luckily enough, Nigerians have seen how rubber stamp we are. You know, we have always been accused. They have seen a very active parliament that is not displaying any issue of passivity on the things that are very important to Nigerians. So we are going to take it to the next level. It's an assurance that though we disagree, we will always come to the table and agree for the interest of Nigerians. That is what I'm showing Nigerians.
There are different layers to this conversation. There's, the talk about rules, the conduct, the procedure that was followed, and of course the substantive matter, which is this particular amendment bill. But if we could just stay on that, the rules, the conduct, and the procedure we saw yesterday, a lot of Nigerians would also want to know why, just to get, clarification from you, why did the Deputy Speaker chair that session? And eventually we saw that the Speaker had to intervene. Why was that followed? Because I saw what happened at the Senate. It was the Senate President. So can you explain to Nigerians, at least to clear that part?
Yes, it is every chamber, like you have the House of Representatives and you have the Senate. They are guided by what they call the House rule. And in our House rule, it is the House rule gave mandate to the Deputy Speaker to be the chairman of the Committee of the Whole. It's not chaired by the Speaker of the House. That was why you saw every time we do consideration of reports, which Committee of the Whole handles, and also consideration of bills, the Deputy Speaker becomes the chairman of that committee, and the Speaker becomes a member. But his opinion on issues are also treated as strong opinion. You saw when he intervened. So it's just a product of our House rule. In the Senate, it's different. The President of Senate is still the chairman of the Committee of the Whole. That's why you saw him presiding yesterday. The Speaker couldn't do much because the gavel was not in his hand. The House rule has given the gavel to the Deputy Speaker as the chairman, just like the House rule has also given the members the power to go for division of the House if the need arises.
Right. Just to clear that, so there won't be different insinuations regarding that. But let me take you back to Honorable Yusuf and now begin to look at the substantive issues. So you built up to the point where you talked about, coverage and the procedure that was followed, at least process. Inec was around during this process. So the major contentious clause or section is that part that talks about electronic transmission. And there are two, at least there are two versions right now. The one that says the Commission may transmit results of elections electronically where and when practicable, and the other one that says it has to be at least adjudged, possible by the NCC, and then the National Assembly must approve it. For you, what's the difference?
Yeah, the second one you mentioned is purely the Senate version that came out yesterday. So it's not in any way for consideration in the House. We don't have that version that says NCC and National Assembly must give approval. If I remember vividly, the Constitution did not give such power to any other organization, any other body to give INEC instruction. So I think that should be contested in court, and people will get court to make a right interpretation. But where we are now is that the proposal from the committee that what was in the Electoral Act ab initio should be retained. That is, INEC should be given the discretion to decide what to use. That is where we have contentious issues. Members feel, even at the committee level, the committee will be comprises of INEC, Civil Society Group, Attorney General Office, member of the Senate and House of Rep Committee. We had finished this work as of January 30th this year. So at that level, it was a consensus thing that there is no way presently in Nigeria you cannot get data sent via electronic. Come to think of it, since 2011, data is already being transmitted electronically. Card reader data. We've been using card readers in 2011 election. So what we are just adding to the card reader responsibility is to say after election, the results that are collated and each party's results will now be inputted to. But because before now, until what you get is that accredited voters is inputted, number of people who voted, the difference between those who voted and those who did accreditation, and the total number of voters in that unit are all inputted in the card reader. So we say just add the results to it, and there will still be manual. The intention of this amendment and transmission is to say, hey, if there are peradventure, there's any need to doubt what is on paper, you go to the electronic data to get what was transmitted in the unit. And I was trying to tell us that if as a nation we desire genuinely good governance, we should know that one of the major cause of challenge to good governance is when citizens doubt the legitimacy of government. And a lot of time, it might not be true, the story flying around that election were rigged might not be true. But truth does not only require it be truth, you need to be convinced beyond reasonable doubt. That is why we followed the American last election. The areas that were challenged, manual and electronic, was matched to see if the result is in line with the genuine aspiration of the people. So I want to appeal to Nigerians not to have faith in us, and to continue to put pressure on their representatives to do the right thing. Because
all right, gentlemen.
Where we are now, to me, is a defining.
Yeah. Okay.
Is a defining.
We'll go to break, but we'll bring in some more perspectives and seek clarification from both of you about the process of that lawmaking. Then we'll also have a civil society group. We'll have a lawyer if necessary, just to ensure that we get a rounded perspective on this subject matter. So do stay with us, because we will be right back. Welcome back. We'll continue in our conversation with Honorable Benjamin Kalu, spokesperson of the House, and Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, who is a member of the Committee on Inec, a former chairman on capital markets. Honorable Kalu, now, well, you know, there are several questions, because I think Honorable Yusuf referenced in part about what the laws provide, and one or some persons may challenge certain things in court. And it's got to do with Section 78 of the 1999 Constitution, which gives that sole responsibility of election management and that procedure to INEC. So if the National House of Reps says, well, we're bringing in INEC to explain certain things, and then NCC to explain certain things, especially having heard and read about what the Senate procedure, how that turned out, many just think that the House may be thinking along that line. Are they mindful of Section 78 such that they don't strip INEC of their powers to conduct the elections, as some dailies report that that is what Senate has done?
Thank you, Chamberlain. The supremacy of the Constitution cannot be questioned. And the position of our laws has always been that where there is a conflict between the act of any other act of Parliament and the Constitution, the provisions of the Constitution will always override, because it's supreme. It's a ground norm. And Section 78 is very clear. I'm not sure why our colleagues at the Senate did not address their mind to the provisions of that particular section of the Constitution, which have been highlighted by so many opinion leaders, and which is also very expressly stated, that it will affect the independency of the INEC, if the independence of INEC, if other authorities or persons begin to interfere with the process of conducting an election, and subjecting final approval of a location to be covered by electronic transmission or not falls under that particular element that the Section 78 was trying to cure. They need to be unbiased, they need to be independent, they don't need to be unduly influenced. And yes, I agree with him that people will go to court and contest it if it is not reversed, because Section 78 is supreme. Now, coming to the House, your question is, are we thinking alongside? No, we're not thinking alongside. We are thinking of bringing in the INEC chairman and the NCC as resource persons. They are coming to, highlight on the relevance or otherwise of some of the issues that we raise, and to give us clarifications that will help us process our decision. They are not coming to teach us about the law. They are coming to tell us about some of the questions we could not resolve ourselves. And it is allowed in the course of lawmaking that you invite experts in a particular field as a stakeholder to give opinion, expert opinion. So their expert opinion, we're going to harvest it. But remember, there are still other experts who are members of parliament. So if the opinion is biased, we will grade it on a scale of transparency, on a scale of expertise to know whether it is in order or not in order, because this particular Ninth Assembly is filled with many professionals who are well versed in all these areas of life. So let's hear them, let's compare notes with them and know whether what they said during the committee engagement with the CSOs and other stakeholders, that they are able to do this, what has changed between then and now, and also NCC, what they have to say about coverage of network in Nigeria, and whether or not, what percentage that we have, and whether or not this will be able to survive. So those are that is why we are inviting them. We're not inviting them to help us go against Section 78 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Well, Honorable Kalu, I'm going to come to you on that same matter, but let me just quickly clear something with Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf. You referenced this earlier, Honorable, but I just want to be clear based on what Honorable Kalu has just said now. I want to believe that your committee had conversations with Inec and other relevant bodies concerning the electronic voting and transmission of results. Could you give us a snippet of what transpired when you consulted with Inec, if you did?
Inec has always been a very interested party in this construction of this bill. So last year, March, before the outbreak of coronavirus, before we shut down, we had the retreat in Lagos. Inec, CSO, Senate, House of Rep on the Electoral Act. The only area of major disagreement was e-voting. The assumption was, and the conclusion was, that e-voting will not be possible yet. But transmission of results, there was no contention about it until January this year, when the report was to be put together. And we had Attorney General's office, INEC represented, civil society group, Senate, House of Rep, so that everybody is at the table. Transmission of election results is mere putting into the card reader the physical result you have in your hand. We are not in any way talking about voting via electronic means. So voting will be done by open secret. You go up the queue, get your ballot paper, go into a cubicle and vote. But at the end of the election, agents of all parties are available. They look at this, is your party score 1 and what have you. In your presence, it will be inputted. So that is, to my understanding, what transpired. However, any committee meeting, any committee report is a mere proposal until the House consider the report and adopt it. That's why room is given for amendment. So when it becomes too contentious at the committee level, it was agreed, bring it to the floor. Let's not allow every member to participate in decision making. Why some of us are not comfortable in living in the hand of INEC is that the Electoral Act as it is now left INEC with the responsibility of deciding either to use electronic or manual transmission. I'll come to realize that INEC have been selective in the 2019 election. Said it used manual. Ondo and Edo election, he said they use electronic transmission, and it was applauded. And Inec said they were test running the electric transmission in those elections. And they come to a conclusion that, yeah, we can do it. So that was say, let's tie them with the law, rather than leaving it to the House accomplices or whoever who is taking that decision. Why? Some of us have the opinion that this will take away ballot box snatching. This will take away collation center manipulation. The moment results are transmitted from the unit, anything contrary to what is recorded in the server will become questionable. Nobody is saying that will guarantee 100% free and fair election, but it will reduce the incidence of voting manipulation, result manipulation, and take us as a nation to another pedestal. So it is about Nigeria to some of us. It's about, as a people, what do we leave as legacy to the next generation coming, that we have moved to the next level. And I must be sincere with us. I feel very, very sad if anybody still think that the infrastructure available in Ghana, Senegal, Benin Republic is not available here. If at this level, if they are already doing e-voting, we can do e-voting. Don't forget that in 2009, 2010, in preparation for 2011 election, a lot of resources was voted to acquire this server and other infrastructure for Inec. At that time, in 2011 election, it was appealed that since we are just getting these infrastructures, let's still go with card reader alone. And the card reader did a lot for electionary process. 2011 election, it was adjudged one of the best elections because people were conscious of the fact that aside what the card reader had recorded as accreditation, to be difficult for you to bring in any other thing. So let me just
what was
the committee worked with relevant stakeholders.
All right.
To come up with what we think is
for the avoidance of doubt,
Nigerians.
Just shed some light on this so that people can equally understand it. What was the bone of contention on the floor on that 52? Is it that, because, I mean, the amendments by Honorable Faleke indicated that they want to combine both electronic transmission of results and voting? Or is it that the group that wanted electronic transmission of results didn't communicate properly, so people thought that, or the group that opposed it thought you wanted both electronic voting and transmission of results? Because after manual voting and transmitting results electronically, two different things.
I don't understand why people voted against. I voted for that amendment because that amendment is clear. It's manual and electronic. As of today, the manual transmission is taken for granted. Even if you are doing electronic transmission, there must be a manual document that you transfer electronically. So his amendment is saying, let's do both. Let's have the manual, let's have the electronic. So if you have question with the manual, you go to the electronic to confirm. So I don't know why, maybe it was not clear enough to some people, but I don't doubt the fact that members overwhelmingly voted for that amendment. So, in my own hearing, but I'm not the presiding officer. The presiding officer feels otherwise. But where I have issues is that if he feels otherwise, there's procedure, now rules to clear this. Well, I just done the division yesterday. All this will have been over. Because the beauty of democracy is that you air your view. If majority opinion is not in sync with yours, you have made your view very clear, but you accept the result. We'll have moved.
Let me ask Honorable Kalu one question now based on this same conversation that we are having. Honorable Kalu, based on this position and knowing that the committee that the House of Representatives set up already consulted with Inec elaborately and consulted with all relevant stakeholders, is this summoning or invitation given to Inec and the minister a way of saying that the House is not completely confident in its own committee?
Not at all. Not at all. But before I go into that, let me just help Honorable Yusuf with the question Chamberlain asks, the clarity on the pattern of voting and what was actually the issue. There were three positions. And that three positions, one was, let's return to status quo. Innovation, fighting against tradition through technology is always an issue. Now, some people say, let's return to the status quo, manual or nothing more. Honorable Toby, Deputy Minority Leader, came up and said, let us go for electronic transmission. It will help us the way you help Ondo and Edo. It was voted, the ayes were much, but the presiding took the position with the power of the gavel. Now, another amendment came after the intervention of the Speaker, saying that amendments should be allowed. People should be allowed to express themselves. It's a democracy. Now, a second amendment came, which was the one of Honorable Faleke, who now said, okay, granted, but not conceding that manual is the best or electronic is the best. Let us have a middle approach to it, where the manual will be accommodated as well as the electronic, so that everybody's interest will be captured in there. It was also voted on, and it's very obvious what your television channels captured. Now, back to what you are saying. So that was the issue, and that was the analysis. Now, back to what you are saying about us having confidence in our committee. No, we have confidence in our committee. People like Honorable Yusuf is there, good hands and old hands, and a whole lot of other people that are in that committee. I'm also I'm almost in all the committees, so once in a while I visit to know what is going on. And you find out that it's not the issue of confidence at this level, because we cannot cast aspersion on the integrity of the committee that have been duly appointed by the leadership of the House. But this is an issue of clarification. There is a doubt with regards to whether or not it is doable based on this almighty network availability or non-availability. Let us know the geographical spread. Let the experts come and convince us to help us process our decision, because like he pointed out, it is the committee of the whole that is superior to the committee when they sit alone. When you bring your report, it is a mere proposal. It's not a final document. Until we go through it through that clause-by-clause consideration, you cannot be said to have done your job. And in the process of doing the clause-by-clause consideration, nothing limits us from acquiring more information, new education that will help us process a final position that will drive the agenda of the Nigerian people in any piece of legislation we are looking at. So that is just what it's all about.
So how come then, because this is so clear, how is it then that the Speaker kept on saying that, the Chair Committee of the Whole, Deputy Speaker Honorable Wase, was saying that in his constituency, they only have about 20% coverage, and as such, no such thing was going to happen. Whereas this position was that accommodates everybody, manual voting and electronic transmission of results. So his position was as though they were saying, well, because we have 20% coverage, and in other words, no, we can't have this. So is it that he didn't understand that it was the manual voting and electronic transmission? Because when they vote manually, it has nothing to do with network. It's just the transmission of those, which has always happened. So could you help us understand what was the thinking, if you can, on how he voted? Because many of the impression that he just deliberately just didn't want any of those to stand.
Well, to be honest and to be fair to the chair of the Committee of the Whole yesterday, the point ought to be made that the body language, the mood of the House yesterday, from the inception, was not a good one. Yesterday was a tense, I don't even know whether the idea of looking at that piece of legislation yesterday was the best. I say so because before we said our first prayer, the opening prayer, there was chaos in the House with regards to the 3%, 5% issue on the PIB. And I'm sure you have you said something about that in your other programs. So the tension was really up, and the House was already divided along some certain sentiments before we went into consideration of other report, especially the Electoral Bill, Electoral Act Amendment Bill report. So the noise in the house was much, the distraction was much. Probably the chairman did not hear clearly, because actually at the point I was assisting the chief whip when he went out to handle issue on the PIB. He asked me to take over the position of the chief whip, and I was sitting there. At the point, the chair spoke to me from the table. To be fair to him, he was not hearing what people were saying at the point. He said, "You are in charge of controlling the house. You are the chief whip. You are sitting on the chief whip seat. What are you doing? Calm the house." So the house was in a very bad shape yesterday, and it influenced everybody. And whether you are the chair or the ones that are chaired, emotions were high, and we are all human beings. But you know what? There is still a window to correct all these issues. And that was why the leadership of the House, in their wisdom, agreed. Both the chair agreed, the deputy speaker, the majority leader, the minority leader, the chief whip, deputy chief whip, all these principal officers agreed that it would be good for us to stop where we were and then come back. And that is wisdom. A wise man do change his mind. You know, we wanted to finish the bill yesterday, the report, but when we saw the mood of the House and for the interest of Nigerians, we needed to pause. You know, and retreating is not withdrawal. You retreat a step backwards to enable you jump 2 steps forward. It's a wiser decision. I'm sure that by today, we're going to jump 2 steps forward, hoping that with the support of the constituents and the understanding of the members of the House, who are encouraged that though we have our divergent views, though we celebrate our diversity, let the colors of our diversity reflect on how we define our demarcation. Let it reflect on how we uphold what interests Nigeria, how we put Nigeria first. That is where the beauty of our diversity will be celebrated by Nigerians. So I am reaching out to fellow members and the leaders of the House as we enter again today. Let us go with one thing in mind, and that thing is Nigerians are expecting a lot from us as leaders, and we are trustees of this position. Let's put Nigeria first. We may not be in the parliament forever, and the laws we are making today end up being what we'll complain about tomorrow. So let us be careful in what we do, because Nigerians are full of expectations.
Perhaps we'll come to what the House will do about those fisticuffs we saw between Honorable Gagdi, Honorable Gbela, because that's the highest lawmaking body in the country. I imagine students are watching, children are watching, Nigerians are watching, and they expect the best from lawmakers, right? The honorable lawmakers. So perhaps we'll come to that. But regarding how the House voted, which you referenced, and maybe, like you said, the deputy speaker didn't quite hear, because the atmosphere was tensed, as you said. But I noticed that even unlike what we saw at the Senate, when the lawmakers voted along party lines, I saw that even APC members were in support of what PDP members wanted regarding the electronic voting. Am I right?
Very.
Yeah, you see, this is not just the issue of party at the moment. We are talking about how to engage in global best practices. We are looking at how do we get more transparency out of our process of good governance in Nigeria. We're talking about how do we get accountability to raise the confidence of the governed in what we are doing, because the only way you control loyalty in the country and cohesion is when you build the confidence of the people you are leading, and they believe in the process through which you emerge. And so people are not looking at the colors of party. People are not looking at regions and all those sentiments. It's how do we become better? How do we become more credible in what we do? The fear of many has been, no, we are not experts in all these electronic systems. Somebody somewhere might bastardize the whole process by hacking into the system, declaring result even before the one from the field comes. What becomes of encryption or whatever they call it, like WhatsApp? WhatsApp, we've used it over and over. It has not been broken into or hacked by. So if we want to go electronic, we must spend money to make sure that it is a protected system. That is the fear of many. And that, not that they don't want it. I interviewed one of my good friends who was pushing the agenda, Honorable Coco, and he took time to explain to me and said, my brother, why I'm pushing for this is not because I don't want it, but we are all afraid that it might be used to mutilate the result. It might be used to deny people their, credible
We'll still talk about that bit.
So, if the fear is there, how do we cure the fear?
Yeah,
how do we make sure that
if you don't mind,
is carried along?
We'll talk about that bit as we progress. But let me bring in Honorable Yusuf here at this point. In about a minute or less, we should go to break. So could you tell us, in consideration of what Honorable Carlo has just said, this last bit, how people wanted unity and moving Nigeria forward, PDP is in the minority. They had a minority leader. Why didn't he call for a division?
He must not be the minority leader that should call for division, but members call for division. I did call for division. Honorable Toby called for division. Honorable Chinda called for division. Many other across party, not just PDP, across party. A lot of APC members call for division, but in the judgment or in the judgment of the chair, he chose not to. We would, like I said earlier, we would not be having any reason to still go back to this matter today if we had got a division. Whoever, it will be so glaring, wherever side wins, you don't question, you don't because you have lost, insist that that decision is not right. If you've lost, your opinion is heard, but the majority position is carried. So I sincerely cannot answer why he didn't hit that decision, that direction, but there were calls for division. And my hands were up all through raising the point of order on the need for division, and a lot of other persons did. Maybe he didn't hear us, or maybe did not hear me. Was a bit of his mind about what to do. That cannot sincerely cannot answer that. But I know people call for division.
Okay, so we'll go to break. Don't worry, we'll come back to you in a moment. So we'll find out what are we going to look forward to today. What is the intention of calling for those professionals, Inec and NCCs to come forward? Then we'll look at that, plus the position of civil society, all that when we return. Welcome back. Now we'll get the perspective of Samson Itodo, who is the Executive Director of YIAGA. Good morning, and thank you for joining us today as well. Well, many, I'm sure, like a lot of Nigerians, you're also observing proceedings on the floor of the House. So perhaps in consideration of the previous engagements that CSOs might have had with lawmakers and INEC and several other stakeholders, what is your impression in terms of how things transpired in the National Assembly yesterday?
Well, thanks, and good morning, everyone. Well, as a Nigerian, I feel it's embarrassing, it's distasteful, and quite shameful what transpired, at the Senate yesterday. And what we saw was a determination on the part of, some legislators to block a fundamental critical amendment that will deepen the integrity of our elections. And it's quite sad, because what the senators did yesterday was to vote against the will of the Nigerian people after speaking and demanding that INEC should be granted the discretion to determine the procedure for voting as well as the transmission of results. We also saw what I consider, very a constitutional overreach and breach, where the desperation on the part of the political class, particularly some legislators, to try to undermine the independence of INEC and undermine our electoral process by subjecting, the decisions of INEC and the powers of INEC to approval by a government agency that is unknown to the Constitution. And it's just sad that a constitutional body and someone who is a creation of the Constitution can make that proposal, in the hallowed chamber of the Senate. It's unacceptable and it's disappointing. But if you look at what happened in the House, and I've listened to the two gentlemen whom are very known to me, and I would say that history beckons on the House of Reps today to reverse a constitutional overreach and breach by the Senate, particularly in reference to Section 52 of the Electoral Amendments of the Electoral Bill, and grant Inec the discretion to determine, the procedure for voting and transmission of the results. Nigerians are looking forward to what will transpire in the House today. We believe that the House will not toe the ignoble path that the Senate took with respect to the amendments to Section 52 by voting based and adopting the recommendation by the committee. Why do we need electronic transmission of results? I'd say that it will serve as a check on the manual process. And let's not, deceive and confuse Nigerians. The proposal isn't for electronic transmission, to replace the manual transmission of results. It is just to serve as a check. And when you have these two procedures, it enhances, the quality and the integrity of the process. The second point is about when I heard the Deputy Speaker talk about readiness yesterday, I just chuckle because this is not the first time Inec has been transmitting results of elections. We tried it in 2015, and if you recall, even before 2019 elections, Inec did have a system deployed for transmission of results. In 2019, Yiga Africa, as part of our PVT, did report that in 65% of polling stations across the country in the presidential elections, results were transmitted by Inec. It's there in our report. In the previous Edo and Ondo elections, Inec deployed, the election results viewing portal, and we saw how it deepened the integrity of the process. How, the proposal is, can we confer legality on these innovations Inec has deployed, but also grants the commission, the discretion to determine when it's able to deploy this. Do these machines have vulnerabilities? Yes, they do have vulnerabilities. Are there issues relating to blind spot or dark spots? Yes, there are. But we can't use that as a basis of proposing, some draconian amendments to a proposal that guarantees the transparency of our process. And honestly, this controversy is needless. The provisions are very, very clear, and I don't know why, some lawmakers are trying, to play politics with this particular process and undermine the integrity of our elections.
So what if some persons argue that 65% transmission not good enough, that they prefer something in the region of 80, 85, given that it's election and it can be that contentious?
No, I agree with you. When we say 65%, you recall that in the 2019 elections, there were some polling stations where there were either delays in the use of the card reader to transmit, or in places they never transmitted even accreditation data as well as results. So when you have over average, and keep in mind that it is mainly a statistical sample that we deployed and used for the elections. But I think that given these challenges that we had in the 2019, if you in subsequent elections, you can actually raise that to about 80 or 90. The point is, do we have the infrastructure to transmit results electronically? I'd say we do, and Inec has said it over countless of times that in several elections, it's deployed, the technology to transmit results. So the infrastructure exists. Are there gaps? Yes, there are some gaps, but I don't think it's statistically significant that will preclude us from amending or making provisions in the law, which in any case We aren't making this law for Anambra elections or the 2023 elections. We're legislating for the future. And so our lawmakers should be guided by what will be in the overall public interest and not substitute public interest for their self-serving interest, or whether or not it will confer political victory or political advantage to them. And that's why history beckons on the lawmakers, particularly those ones in the House. And I'm very, excited with the submissions made by the two gentlemen who have spoken, Honorable Kalu and Honorable Tajuddin. And I want to believe that majority of members in the House of Reps will today stand up, in defense of the will and the interests of the people, and adopt, the proposal by the committee and grant INEC that discretion. Chamberlain, when INEC was going to deploy smart card readers, before in the 2015 elections, Professor Jega went to the Council of State, to explain this technology. He went to the National Assembly to explain this technology and try to mobilize their support. When INEC was going to create additional polling units, the INEC chairman and the commission consulted with the Council of State and went to the National Assembly. These are, conventions and practices that can be employed in this process. So I don't think that, conscripting INEC and mainstreaming another institution that is unknown to the Constitution to subject INEC's decision to scrutiny by that institution is unacceptable and should be jettisoned. And the House, and I need to reiterate, that is a call, there's a history call that is beckoned on the House of Reps. And I hope that as they vote today, they will stand up in defense of the will of the people that they represent. And that will, the collective and the aggregate will, is that at this time of our history, our electoral law should be amended in such a way that it confers discretion on INEC to deploy, technology either for voting or the transmission of results.
Mr. Itodo, perhaps there is a need for us to you just told us now the process that the previous INEC boss went through to try to validate the position. Maybe there isn't enough understanding on the part of, the other members of the House that are voting against this provision that is being proposed. Given that, of course, you heard Honorable Wase say in there that only 20% of his own constituency is covered. By this, do you think there is validity in that argument that we do not have significant, or rather sufficient coverage in every part of the country, as by Honorable Wase? Perhaps that's the position that a good number of these people who voted against it hold, and consequently they would want to hold that position.
No, the point is, are these concerns valid? Yes, these concerns are valid, right? But what is the percentage? And the fact that the House of Reps, is inviting the NCC, we look forward to the outcome of that presentation today. Are these concerns valid? Yes, they are valid. Are they statistically significant that will subject us as a country from making the amendments that is proposed? My answer is no. And in any case, I don't know if it's 20%. We wait for the NCC. But what I know for sure is the proposal is to the effect that it recognizes or legitimizes this. And that's why the provision says when it is practicable. And I believe that, the Electoral Commission cannot deploy electronic transmission in places where it is clear that there are dark spots or blind spots. And even if you've got those places, and let me cite an example. In the Ondo elections, even in the Edo elections, there were some polling units, a few of them, where there was no network, either 2G or 3G or 4G, strong enough to transmit images. Well, what happened? We saw how people, followed the presiding officers with the results sheet and the smart card readers and the Z pads up to the mountains where they were networked to transmit the results. That is a demonstration of citizens' vigilance and democracy. So it is possible. Let's not claim that it is not possible. If the country has, resources to vote about 4 billion, to monitor WhatsApp conversations and also monitor phone calls, then this same country would have the capacity to ensure there's penetration across different parts of the country. So I don't think that it is statistically significant enough that will prevent us from making a progressive law.
Okay, before we take this back to Abuja, just quickly to clarify, in order to transmit results electronically, what kind of network do you need? 2G, 3G, or 4G?
It depends on the system that the Electoral Commission is deploying. If you're using SMS, I'd say you all you need is 2G can actually transmit. Can 2G transmit images? Because what you have is the Z pads, which is the new technology Inec is deploying, and the tablets. Is 2G strong enough to transmit images? I doubt. But there are places where you have 3G or 4G, and some cases you even find that depending on the strength of the network, 2G can even transmit images in some locations. But it depends on the system. So these are conversations that we can have. If the law even provides that Inec can deploy this technology when it is practicable. That's why it's when it is practicable, but not to make a legislation that subjects Inec's discretion to the whims and caprices of another institution that is unknown to the Constitution. That will amount to undue interference with the constitutional power that Inec have. And that is where Nigerians do have a fundamental problem with the amendment passed by the Senate.
Let's bring in Honorable Kalu on this matter, because looking ahead, today, 10 a.m., the House is going to reconvene. So the NCC and Inec will be there. But there are those who quickly want to remind us that perhaps if the House, I know you say you have professionals in there, so they'll be looking to see if they'll be asking NCC, they're supposed to supervise this Universal Service Provision Fund. So they have got they were actually established by the federal government of Nigeria to facilitate the achievement of national policy goals for universal access, universal services to information and technology in rural, unserved, and underserved areas of Nigeria. Now, that fund is being managed to facilitate the widest possible access to affordable telecommunication services for greater social equity and inclusion. And then we also checked and found out that this agency has been receiving billions in terms of budgetary allocation. Now, this particular document, at least that one was cleared 2019. So the Senate looked at this, they approved budget for this same agency, and as a matter of fact, the budget that was approved at that time was a total of 15,174,125,072 naira only for this commission. So do we expect the House to ask them, perhaps NCC could shed light on, if we're assuming now, if they say, well, we don't have certain coverage, we can't do certain things. So that may give room for more questions as to, there'll be no reason anyway why they shouldn't. So will this kind of questions feature as we get NCC appear before the honorable members?
Yeah, Chamberlain, thanks a lot. Before I go into that, I would like to address issues raised by your colleague there on what is going to happen today, and especially with regards to those members of the House who ignore the fact that young people were watching the program live and behave themselves in a dishonorable way by punching each other and all that. What is the House going to do about it, and also to prevent it from happening today? We have a committee called the Ethics and Privileges Committee, and yesterday some of the members and the leadership of that committee were very disappointed with the outing of some members and they have already started taking steps to make sure that beyond the consideration of this report, beyond our vacation, they have cases to answer. And as the image maker of the House, yesterday I posted a message to members, warning members to be very careful of their conduct, because beyond the consideration of this particular report, you see the life of your membership still exists. It extends to maybe another 2 years or 1 year plus. Therefore, you have to answer to the provisions of our rule book with regards to misbehaviors inside the chamber, to one another. So to answer your question, his question to that, they are not going to go unpunished. They will be facing at the right time the ethics and privileges. It cannot be free for all, that you hurt one another in the course of working for Nigerians in that hallowed chamber. It's a sacred place. It's not a place for people to behave in a way that is dishonorable, and we will not be able to allow that to happen. Today we have also warned that those who are planning to cause more problem, they should be careful, because the sergeant at arms have been detailed to ensure you don't come into the National Assembly with strange material. You'll be embarrassed and will carry you live if you come in with any weapons. Some people are boasting they want to do that and that. We don't want that to happen. So we are increasing the security of that particular chamber today. Now, on the issue of whether or not we are going to be entertaining questions or giving questions to our invited guests today with regards to the provisions of budget provisions for them. This is not budget hearing. It's not a budget defense. It's not budget presentation. We are not going to be going into looking at their budget, but they are going to be justifying whatever sanction they are going to give to the House today. So if they say there's no network, they will tell us why there is no network there. So, and that has to be done empirically. Is it because of shortage of fund? Is it because the law does not allow you? Or what is the problem? So we will get to know, because it's a solution hub. The parliament remains a solution hub. So when we meet like that, we'll take time to, digest the needs analyses and also prove our solutions that will be able to bridge the gap in the society. So we will not go into what we do during budget presentation and budget defense, but if there are relevant questions that has to do with, we don't have fund, that is why we've not been able to have a good geographical spread of our network across the nation, we'll ask questions that will make them justify or otherwise the money that we give to them.
We're winding down now. So, Honorable Yusuf, so what should the people expect today? And by the way, is the chair of the Committee of the Whole still going to preside, given what transpired yesterday?
Yeah, that's the rule. As of today, the rule will give you to mandate to the Deputy Speaker to chair the Committee of the Whole. However, I want to clarify something. In 2019 election, Inec deploy what you call e-returning officer. The e-returning officers, where their responsibility was to take manual result and input electronically so I get to the server. Why will Inec deploy e-returning officer if they do not have the capacity for transmission? So it is not in contention. And I want to appeal again. Now we are talking about transmission. When they say there's no coverage, to what extent is there any part of Nigeria today that you cannot send SMS message? It might not be the whole community, but there will be areas you get signal. Like he did allude in Edo, that the people followed. Electorate followed the Inec officials to where there is network. And come to think of it, aren't we sending our money via electronic means? Are we not doing transaction every day via electronic means? Why are we in doubt that the same process that we put our money through cannot carry our votes?
We'll get your point, gentlemen.
Today, I expect that when we get to the floor, the issues will be more like the experts will give their view.
So we'll look forward to that. For the whole country.
And I appeal
The whole country will be watching, as a matter of fact. I'm really sorry
The whole country will be watching.
Well, my apologies, we're out of time. But
The beauty of democracy is that you have your say.
All right, then. Samson, you need to make this as brief as possible. Give us your concluding thoughts.
I think you've used the line, Chamberlain. Nigerians will be watching, and we urge the House of Reps adopt the proposal as made by the committee to grant Inec the discretion to deploy technology for voting, as well as electronic transmission of results. So please, we urge you stand with the Nigerian people in this momentous period.
There's Samson Intodo, Executive Director, YIAGA, Honorable Tajuddin Yusuf, Member Committee on Inec and former Chairman House Committee on Capital Market, as well as Honorable Benjamin Kalu, who is the spokesperson of the House. Gentlemen, thank you all for your perspectives today.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, we're back in a moment. Join us again. Let's take a look at your feedback, and we'll start from Onoikoli Law. Okay, you've got the first one about electronic transmission of results. Your feedback says, JAMB results, electronic. WAEC results, electronic. ICANN results, electronic. Phone registration, electronic. Money transfer, electronic. International passport, electronic. Working from home, electronic. Lectures, electronic. INEC results, no network coverage. Transport by road.
He didn't add NIN registration.
NIN too. We do NIN via electronic means.
And voter registration.
Oh, that list is... Okay, interesting perspective there. I'll take a look at this one from Frank. Says, the position of the Senate concerning e-transmission of election results is quite germane to the current data coverage in Nigeria, which is less than 50%. Well, network coverage, data coverage, I think two different things now, because NCC even puts the network coverage at way beyond that. But it goes on to say it is totally unrealistic to have a partial e-transmission where practicable of elections result has been canvassed by some of the senators. The opposition senators should stop this blackmail and unnecessary apprehension.
No, well, that's not correct. They didn't say partial transmission of electronic. They said manual voting and then electronic transmission, not like partial transmission.
Which is also like part transmission, or rather, optional transmission, because
it doesn't affect voting. They should get that right. Voting will be over and done with. And then there's a manual result, but to transmit electronically.
Yeah.
Whatever you're transmitting electronically, you have a manual copy.
Just in case.
That's all.
Lanre, on the same issue, we're not ready for electronic transmission of elections in Nigeria. We can't compare this process with BVN, NIN, JAMB, etc. because this is time-bound, real-time online. Do we have internet all over the country? Do we do it in selected places? The litigation will be voluminous. There will be overwhelming problems. We have over 35% internet coverage, but less expertise to use them. The problems are unlimited. We are not ready yet, he says.
Well, I recall one of the service providers saying, I mean, as of June, they had network coverage of 88.9%.
So
that's 90%.
Yeah.
And 3G was, I think, 80% of their.
And that was then, about 2 years ago.
No, this was in June.
June this year.
I imagine that other networks
So there you go.
cover areas that some others don't cover.
So Victor Oguike says concerning voice vote, I've always seen the voice vote as a fraud. Both houses have spent millions on an electronic computerized voting system, but they refuse to use this system. Little wonder they're against little changes that can transform our electoral system. We need to hold these reps and senators responsible. They must know we are watching, and it's no longer business as usual. The issue is so simple and almost primitive that we're still arguing over difficulties in using a simple text message to transmit results in 2021.
Take a look at Kenneth's mail. It says, I almost felt ashamed yesterday when some members of the Senate told some field journalists that one of the reasons why electronic transmission of vote results wouldn't work is lack of access to electricity and internet in most areas in the country. The question I asked myself was, what does it take to guarantee constant power supply in Nigeria, as well as internet access for all? Corruption, oh, corruption. God help Nigeria.
Lewis says, on the same issue, from what Nigerians saw transpired in the House of Representatives yesterday, it is evidently clear that it's not those who vote, but the person or persons who declare the results that determine the winner of an election. Members of the House of Reps, through a voice vote, decided for electronic transmission of elections, but the presiding deputy speaker used his gavel to decide against. Permit me to ask, are we progressing or retrogressing as a nation?
Well, Adeleke Awe says every side in this case seems to have convincing argument. The House of Reps has invited Inec and NCC to come and give their independent opinion on the case. Whatever opinion these two bodies give should and must be backed by data. Nigerians expect that these decisions made on their behalf will be based on credible evidence. Anything short of this will be doubted, I beg your pardon, by reasonable Nigerians.
Can I move a motion for electronic voting in the National Assembly and electronic transmission?
Well, they have processes. They have means to vote. But I hope it works. So if they say they haven't fixed it, it's a different kettle of fish and time.
If you want to move the motion, you can move it here.
Unless my privilege has been breached.
Well, Ayo is the one who breached it, so he can hold him to account. And by the way, some of the senators, some of them were actually out of the country, we understand. But there you go. That is the show today. Thank you all for your comments. We'll see you next week. I'm Chamberlain. So
I'm Kayode Okikelu.
Have a wonderful rest of your weekend. I'm Ayo Makinde.